12,000 years of cosmic cycles and flowers of consciousness. Probable realities. Question. What do you mean if we go back about 10,000 years ago nothing existed? But it was our imaginations. Answer. As I have said earlier, you understand how this works, but to the ordinary folks, this is flat-out insanity. You can strengthen your muscles and sharpen your teeth by explaining to them what this is all about. Commentary. Okay, so what it is here is that the way the nature of reality has been represented to me is that every instance, every single moment, blooms or branches its versions of futures and pasts. It sends pulses outwards from this very moment, altering in small increments. But as time passes, these increments becomes noticeable. For example, right now, based on this moment, if you venture into the past, you will discover some slight differences and variations of what you remember. Hence the Mandela effect. And another instance, if you venture in the past again, it would have changed, so the past changes with the present moment. It is an expanding reality. So because reality is the product of consciousness, whenever we look at it, because the consciousness is evolving, then that past reality evolves with it too. So, my understanding is that these influences can only go so far back. And so far ahead in the future where beyond that is empty in the sense that our consciousness cannot reach. It is like a light casting a shadow on the past and future, and all these moments change simultaneously with the past. This is the only principle that can explain what Thao is talking about. That is why hypnosis, past life regression, remote viewing, and channeling are not crystallized information. It is an interaction of different energies, and therefore, a probable reality. By performing remote viewing or hypnosis, an individual will influence the past and future at the same time. So even the evidence will manifest in the past, the event an individual sees will manifest there with remnants. In the same way, healing happens with physical manifestation that is not limited to the present moment, but all realities. Realities based on the pattern of flower of life, flowers of consciousness. Question. So just for clarity's sake, our consciousness can only venture into certain depths of reality and not beyond that. Answer. That is correct. Consciousness is the flower of life. That pattern of flower of life is what consciousness is. And as you can see, this flower of life reaches a certain point where it does not bloom anymore. And on average it is 12,000 years ahead or 12,000 in the past. And alternate or probable realities. There are other 2,000 years that are not related to physical but is of other nature. And it is through these borders that a consciousness, once it has matured, then moves into another stage of life. And therefore the 13th number is the new world where there is an invitation to a new reality. Consciousness has its ancestor. That consciousness is like an ocean where there are also varieties of water. A person can have a variety of consciousness and use them accordingly. These varieties of consciousnesses are flowers of life, also referred to as flowers of consciousness, because they appear in a pattern like that of a flower on different realities. A consciousness can permeate through different flowers of consciousness to experience different realities. And as consciousness evolves, they procreate other flowers of consciousnesses. Question. Can you elaborate more on why specific it is 12,000 years, in association with the flower of life? Answer. The flower of life portrays how consciousness interacts with a certain medium. According to scientists, all vibrations require a certain medium to propagate, and that this matter or medium is what can limit or what dictates a variety of possibilities on how it can interact with consciousness on all possibilities and probabilities. Once it has completed these probabilities, it becomes a complete being. It is a matured being. If you can observe the division of cells as the embryo forms, you will discover that it follows the same pattern, where after every 6 stages it jumps into another complex function, and thus, this probability is based on the structure or a pattern of certain realms or reality, where yours is that of the flower of life. More will be elaborated later. Understand that consciousness does not just manifest things out of nothing, but it needs to be inseminated on a certain medium. These mediums are what predict the outcomes of a reality, and sometimes these mediums have pre-existing life or other existing consciousness on them, in a sense that the physical reality is a medium, but not as you perceive them. as your perception filters certain things or reduces the immensity and complexity of the reality of these mediums so that it can be at your convenience for you to experience it. So, most of the time, the statement consciousness creates reality is misunderstood because the proper term would be consciousness projects a reality, as there is a base or primary reality that your consciousness must abide by those principles. But it does project a reality, which is an extremely reduced version of the prime reality. This prime reality is a medium, where it is referred to as the seat of consciousness, where once a consciousness interacts with it, it blooms a flower of consciousness as the result of that interaction. If you are holding a glass of cold water, it is your perception that interprets what you experience as a glass of cold water, because outside your consciousness, there is nothing to decide when that glass is cold or hot, big or small, solid or fluid. It doesn't have a shape either because there is nothing to keep track of time, solidity, or size. This is so because there is no point of reference, as everything is one thing. The heart has rhythms. The body has a ratio of lengths. For example, each segment on a finger is an inch. Then a foot is 1 foot in length. These ratios of rhythms, cycles, and lengths are of this reality. They are of the medium of this reality, even the heart pulses of this reality. Your heart pulse is what it is based on this reality. A year is also a pulse or a rhythm with 12 moon cycles. A person's life cycle on this medium is meant to be 120 years. With the multiplication in the factor of 100 generations, the original biological genes would have been exhausted. In terms of combinations and permutation, this means the biological offspring will be attacked by diseases, and so many other factors, because as any species multiply, their ability to cope with the environment is reduced by an X factor, hence deterioration. Therefore, anything beyond these years is simply non-existent based on the cosmic cycles of your system, where nothing can exist any longer. And thus these 12,000 years is the complete cycle where the civilization has reached its peak at the half of 12,000 years, only to begin to decline again. According to the Bible, God created the heavens and the earth for 7 days. The term God is sometimes interchangeable with universal principles or universal laws. In the beginning, there was the Word. The word implying vibrations. These vibrations are principles, as in cycles of life. A day is a cycle, a pulse, and a frequency, where one day on one dimension could be 1,000 years in another dimension. And the humans were created for 6 days. The pattern of 7, when doubled, is 14, but because 7 is not counted because of various reasons, this is not a dimension but a paradise. As in, God rested for the 7th day. Then we only count 6 days, because of dual and nature of polarity we take double of 6, which is 12. At the peak of 6,000 years is the time where the offspring or the blooming flower is at its peak. This is the God state on which anything is possible for that generation to decide to either elevate themselves or destroy themselves. This shows that in this present moment, a single consciousness is neutral, meaning it is pure potential, where in that instance there are variations of outcomes depending on the action that is executed at that moment. On the mass consciousness level, however, you are in a certain era, where civilization will reach a God state, where anything is possible. There will be 1,000 years of no suffering, no hunger, no diseases, just paradise. Then after that, your civilization will begin to deteriorate. Those who can ascend beyond this realm of reality will ascend, and those who want to stay will begin to deteriorate to the extinction level event. Realities beyond our consciousness. Question. So, if I have grasped what you are portraying here, is that even our imaginations will not comprehend anything beyond 12,000 years? I mean, when scientists say dinosaurs existed millions of years ago, or the first human existed so many years ago, is this only an imaginary reality that our consciousness cannot comprehend? Answer. It is not so. It only means that there are other larger cosmic cycles that certain groups of beings dwell within. It means that in 1 year, for example, there are no other seasons beyond the 4 of the 3-month seasons, and that certain crops have their lifespan, where certain life forms will not be compatible with the seasons of your planet, which means what is within your planet cannot go beyond these 12-month cycle. Some crops have a lifespan of 3 months, which is roughly 1 season in a year, and that within 3 months you plant a crop. It grows from seedling to maturity stage and bears fruits. Then it dies, but some trees won't produce fruit until they are over 15 years. This does not mean the 3 months crops will not stay side by side with the super long seasonal trees. It simply means that your system cannot host super civilization that goes beyond the length of 12,000 years because of compatibility issues. As far as consciousness is concerned, your consciousness is your reality. If you use your current reality as a base for your imagination, you simply cannot venture beyond this confinement or 12,000 years. We are offering an invitation that once you entertain our suggestions, once you at least begin to see your reality through these suggestions, then you can shift your consciousness to a broader reality where it is not as restricted as to where you are as of this moment.